Welcome back to Discussions in Dickinson, and joining me now is Jan Zend, and she is the City Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Jan.
Thank you.
I've asked Jan to join us today because we have a process coming up in town that's called equalization. Jan, can you talk about that process and what it means?
The equalization process, what the assessor's office is required to do by state law is to assess each taxable property every February 1st of each year. And how we do this is we take comparable sales of property and compare them to the existing properties that we have to see if we are in line with those sales. And if we are not, then we need to make adjustments to those property. But that is what the whole process it consists of, is equalization, making sure that we have like properties assessed with other like properties and sales.
So how do you determine, when you say like properties, are you talking about apartments being in one category, houses in another, duplexes in another, or is it broken down more than that?
Actually, we have the apartments would fall under commercial property. Any units, 3 units on up with the residential properties, single family would be under residential. And those are the properties that we are comparing. And how we compare these properties, every property has characteristics for the property itself, and some of those characteristics that we use are grade, quality, condition, year built, square footage, how many bathrooms there are, basement finish, and garages. And those are the amenities that we use to assess these properties.
Okay. So during that, if I'm going to build a brand new home in the city of Dickinson, are there any programs out there that help lower my cost related to property taxes?
There is offered on a new construction property, there is a 2-year exemption that is offered on new construction. And that consists of the $100,000 off the structure for 2 years. For the owner occupied, starts when the property owner actually moves into it and the property is sold. We also have the builder exemption, and those builders can get an exemption up to $100,000 also for 2 years. If it's going to stay with the builder, then it has to be owned by the builder and unoccupied. But one thing to keep in mind, when that property is, the builder builds it and that property is sold, that valuation is prorated in that year. So sometimes that property owner will end up paying more that first year in taxes or have more valuation, and then the next 2 years they'll get their full $100,000 exemption.
So in other words, if I build a $250,000 house in town, only $150,000 of that is going to be taxed based on this exemption, at least for the first couple of years.
That's correct, and plus the land value. The land value is not exempt.
So I've heard you say true and full value. How does an assessor determine what true and full value is?
We have a computer-assisted mass appraisal system, and what that helps us do is we also have a tool that we uses the sales ratio study, and that again compares the properties that are selling versus those that aren't selling, and that's how the system works. You have to apply that to the properties that aren't selling, and this system, through the amenities that we tax, and we compare like properties and compare to make sure that we are in line with those market sales. So what is the difference then between, when you buy a house, you get your house appraised. What's the difference between an appraisal that's done through a purchasing process or what you do in establishing true and full? We deal with mass appraisal, and mass appraisal and single property appraisal have the same methodology. However, mass appraisal we use a number of properties to value, and we use statistical testing and standardized procedures, whereas for a given date, and whereas single property appraisal uses one single property as of a given date.
Okay. So if an estimation value increases on properties, does that affect all of them in the same way, or can you raise the value on one property that's in the same class as another?
Correct. The valuations do not necessarily increase the same for each property. It depends on the characteristics of the property. It also depends on the neighborhoods and like I said, the characteristics of the property, what in comparison to like sales.
So if my value goes up, what would drive that increase in property value? What would make my house go up in value?
It could be supply and demand. It could be your economic conditions, which consist of supply and demand, your interest rates, and maybe tax law changes, inflation. Those would all affect the property values because we base property values on market value.
So in the city of Dickinson, we're a growing community, and we've had a lot of pressure on homes. It's hard to find a home in town. So when a true and full goes up, you mentioned economic pressures as a reason for the increases. Is there a threshold, or is there a method set out that I as a homeowner will know if my assessment's going to go up in value? Do you have to contact me in some way?
We do. If the property value increases 10% and $3,000 over the previous year, we are required by state law to notify the property owner. If it isn't, above 10% or above, they obviously wouldn't get notified.
Okay. So if I get one of those letters and I don't agree with that increase, what can I do as a homeowner in town?
You can appeal your valuation. Probably the most simple step is to contact our office. We would ask that you bring documentation or have reasoning why you don't agree with it. We will go out and recheck your property and make sure that we have all the correct information and that it is based on the right sales. If you still do not agree, you have another option of attending the City Board of Equalization meeting, which is normally held the second Tuesday of April each year. And then you can also go through the abatement process, which consists of filing an abatement with the county auditor, and then that gets referred to us. And then it's handled through a process where it comes to the city and also has to go through the county board.
Okay. So this process is heavily regulated, it sounds like.
Yes.
From the state to the... is that where most of the direction comes from on property values and such, or this assessment process? Correct.
It is from the state. We have to abide by the state of North Dakota Tax Department law. And as far as the appealing process, if it is to be done through the city board, that property owner has to go through the channels of the city board, the county board, and can also go to this as far as the state board, but has to always appear at that city board first if they do wish.
So they can't go directly to the state board. They have to appear at the city board first. If they don't appear at the city board, can they still show up at the state?
They can, but the state will not hear it because they do have to appear at the city board.
Okay. So if somebody's interested in that process, how would they contact? Do they contact you, or how would they go about?
Correct. We do ask that if there is an issue with your valuation, that you actually contact our office first and see if we can make sure we have the correct information if we work it out, and then if not, then we can help them proceed with what they want to do.
What's the best way to contact you? Is that by phone or email or website or?
They could contact our office at 701-456-7734. We do have a website out there. It is www.dickinsonCity.NorthDakotaAssessors.com. It's kind of a mouthful, but that has all of our property information, all the other properties that if they want to compare and whatever. And we're always working on updating that. We also list the types of exemptions that are on there, state forms, information on what the assessor's office does, the appeal process. All that is listed on our website. So it's a very good tool if somebody would want to go and look at that.
Is everybody's home during this process of assessment and establishment